From WCIA 3 with your host, Kevin Lighty, this is Behind the Forecast.
Welcome back, y'all. I'm so glad you're with us here once again for another show. I'm Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lighty here at WCIA-3. We always kick off the show talking about the most viral weather videos of the week. Unfortunately, there have not been a lot of good things going on with the weather over the past week. A lot of floods and fires and things going on. But let's get to it. Video number one, going to take us out to the Grand Canyon. That's right. Unfortunately, the Grand Canyon catching fire. Goodness. The North Rim hit really hard there. Big fire, 8,500 acres. A lightning strike actually sparked this on the 4th of July, and they've been dealing with this. Look at all of that smoke. You can't even see down there. Again, the Grand Canyon Lodge, a beloved place that people stayed out there, destroyed in the fire. So some bad news out there in portions of the Grand Canyon. Hate to see that. Okay. More not so great news. Flooding. This is actually in New Jersey. Look at this. Rescuers having to do, swift water rescues out here. Flash flooding led to these rescues. Cars stalled out there. Crews are scrambling to try to get to people. Just amazing. Props to the first responders for getting out there and doing what they got to do. But remember, guys, turn around. Don't drown. And don't put these first responders' lives at risk, okay? All right, let's go to our next video. More flooding. This actually in the Oklahoma City area. Significant flooding over there. A lot of cars underwater. In the Oklahoma City metro area over the past week. A lot of flash flood warnings that were being issued as a result. And there you go. Try not to drive in those flooded waters, guys. And we've had a lot of that even here locally, but it is going on across a large part of the country. I've had a lot of people ask, have we seen more flooding this year? We actually have. There's been quite a bit more in the way of flooding. So again, guys, just be careful out there as the weather stays active. But how about this? Kind of a cool view. This is actually in Dixon, Illinois. This was actually on Friday, July 11th. Big shelf cloud moving through. You can see it. Look at it right there. That's kind of a cool view. Watching the leading edge of a thunderstorm cloud kind of roll in. A lot of times you get some strong gusty winds right along that leading edge of the cloud. So Dixon, Illinois, shelf cloud. Always know the difference between a shelf cloud and a wall cloud. Okay, a wall cloud's always going to be rotating. Okay, this next one, pretty serious situation here. Officer breaking a window because there were kids left unattended in a hot car. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this because there's going to be a lot of people potentially impacted by this here in the coming days. And so basically this was in Cobb County, so near Atlanta, as they were dispatched to come out there. Somebody noticed some kids in the car. So it was 87 degrees on that day, but the kids were crying in the car. The officers came out there because, again, internally in that car it can be 117 degrees inside the car. So they came out, and there's a little boy and a little girl in there. And fortunately, the officers came on board, broke the windows out, got the kids out of the car. Again, with the heat and humidity, it's in the forecast for this upcoming week for us here. Please, guys, please don't leave your kids, don't leave your pets in those hot cars, as it's going to get hot here through the weekend and into next week, so prepare for that. I've got part two with meteorologist Jeff Frame. We talked to him last week. He's back for more, and he's coming up after the break. All right, welcome back to Behind the Forecast. Well, last week we talked with Jeff Frame, a U of I professor, meteorologist, storm chaser extraordinaire, and he is gracious enough to join us again here this week. And Jeff is back here with us. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Great to be back here, Kevin. Thanks for the invite back. We couldn't quite get everything in last week.
That's exactly right. And so we've got some more to talk about. So we talked a lot about kind of storm chasing last time here. And you take out that field class out there. And one of our meteorologists, Seth, went on that with you, I believe, last year or a couple years ago?
2023, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right. After he graduated, we can actually take newly graduated seniors out there. Thank you for letting him go.
Yeah.
And, the year he went, we jokingly call that Clovis Summer Camp. named after the small town of Clovis in eastern New Mexico.
Yeah, he talked about being out there in New Mexico.
Right, yeah, it was weirdest thing. For something like a week and a half, we were either in West Texas or eastern New Mexico for like 10 days straight, which really did cut down on the driving a little bit. That actually set a record low for the amount of miles driven.
So you guys have done the storm chasing thing for a long time. A lot of students have gone through that. You're teaching these students about meteorology and kind of the ins and outs of it. So right now is a time where in meteorology and things there may be some challenges and things that are kind of coming up now. Can you talk a little bit about in meteorology right now and the Weather Service and things that are going on, kind of some of the challenges that some meteorologists may be facing here kind of in the future?
Right, yeah, that's the big issue around that is surrounding budget and funding toward NOAA, parent organization of the National Weather Service. Right now, of the NOAA cuts, and there were several hundred people cut from NOAA, very few of those were actually Weather Service forecasters, but a lot of them were scientists and researchers and techs and people who run the models. And some of these people I know, and they're just very good people, but it was their first year on the job, so they were laid off. And then going forward, what will next year's budget hold? Well, we don't know. There's a budget proposal that was just laid out this week, which basically zeroes out all government research funding, which I think is extremely dangerous and short-sighted. But of course, Congress has final say over that. And as of when we're recording this here in early July, we don't know what's going to happen with that. But that's not the same thing as they call it, the big beautiful bill. That's something completely unrelated to all of this.
So, people see me on TV. They see me as the meteorologist, the face, of it. But there are so many people behind the scenes that people don't even know about, realize that I'm using this data. Well, this data doesn't just come to me magically, right? And so there could be some challenges even in the future down the line for even TV meteorologists with the lack of access to data. Would you kind of agree with that?
Right. Well, for example, weather balloons. Our local office in Lincoln has been very good launching their balloon twice a day. As usual, they have the staff for that. But some forecast offices, like out in South Dakota, for example, or Nebraska, haven't had the staff for that. And the weather balloons, especially for severe weather, it lets you say, here's what the atmosphere actually looks like. Surface observation is very important. Radar, of course, is there. The system is aging. It's 35 years old now, I think. But you lose the text. Well, then if something breaks, well, it's going to take longer for somebody to go fix it, is basically what that is. Satellites, we're always trying to plan the next generation of satellites and what may or may not be on those. And then there's, of course, the forecast models. And the forecast models, yeah, it's a big computer program that simulates the atmosphere is what it is. And there are, a dozen plus different forecast models ranging from the entire globe all the way down to a small area of the United States. And the models that run over the whole globe, the American model, we call that the GFS, stands for Global Forecast System. There's a European model. There's a model from the UK Meteorology Office. There are some models we run only over the United States, and some of them have this very fine called grid spacing or grid resolution, allowing them to see very small things like individual thunderstorms or the inner core of things going on around the eye and the eye wall of a hurricane. Now, those models can't make out individual tornadoes. Tornadoes are just way too small. The order of 100 meters or 100 yards across. And 100 yards isn't all that far unless, you're a fan of Purdue football. Then it's
there it is.
Sorry.
No, you had to get it in there.
I had to.
It's okay. I'm an Indiana guy. You're fine.
Right. Okay. That's right. That's right. So we run all these weather models, and you look at those data, and you figure out some of them run every hour. What might happen today? What might not happen today? I look at those models in the observations when I'm out on my field course. And then there are new experimental products like Warn on Forecast. Where we're bringing in radar data, assimilating that into the computers, and then letting a whole suite of computer simulations take those out and say, well, which of these storms has the best chance of intensifying right now when they're all in a similar environment? Which one of these might have the best chance of producing a tornado? Not now, that's our warning time scale, but maybe an hour from now, so we can anticipate that, or maybe put out some kind of a statement, not a warning, but something in between a watch and a warning to give people a heads up, saying, hey, in Joplin, Missouri, or whoever, this storm could be intensifying as it comes your way.
So, you teach, a lot of students and whatnot. Have you found any of them kind of they got it, 4 years ago, they were like, I want to do meteorology. Have you found any of them being a little more like, I don't say fearful, but kind of on edge or uneasy about kind of where things potentially could be going? Has there been some of that? Or
with the job market, yes. Now, I did hear the Weather Service is hiring 126 more people. Those jobs, I heard that over a month ago. Those jobs still haven't been posted, but that's, government efficiency, I guess.
Takes a little time.
It always has. That's nothing new. That's nothing new for those positions. Yeah. So that could be a good thing for some of them. There's always positions in television. And of course, the one thing a lot of folks don't really hear about is private industry as well. For example, a company like UPS, right, that delivers your packages. What can Brown do for you? We had Ford last week. We'll do UPS
there
this
we go.
week.
Hey, UPS, call us up for the sponsorship.
That's right. And they have a fleet of airplanes based out of, I think it's Louisville, Kentucky, flying things all over the country. And, of course, they're really busy in December. And what's going on in December? Snow and things like that. Shipping companies, right? You hear a lot about, our trade with China and places in Asia. Well, those ships don't want to be stuck in port over in China from a typhoon if they can safely sail around the typhoon. But of course, you don't want to leave that up to the ship captains, because then it's, the captain and all those souls on board, that in as little as 10 years ago, a ship sailed into a hurricane in the Atlantic and sunk in the Bahamas, just ignored the forecast. So. Or just, insurance companies, for example, are employing meteorologists. Was this actually hail that caused damage to people's roofs? And we can go back and actually look at the radar data and see that. And some of those folks actually end up testifying in court sometimes, and, either for or against the insurance companies, depending on what's going on. So it's, several years ago, meteorology was ranked as one of the majors with the lowest unemployment rate. And it's not that everybody becomes a forecaster. Some folks do a lot of data analysis jobs. For example, you hear about big data. Well, weather, we generate enormous amounts of data. Those computer models I talked about, the output from those can be in the gigabytes. Somebody from Wisconsin is running a tornado simulation with 10-meter resolution. Just being able to view that is a huge big data problem, not to use too many adjectives there. Environmental, alternative energy, solar, wind, not only where to put the things, which depends on weather and climate, but also, well, what might our yield be? Or even trading things, weather derivatives, trading power, for example. I have a friend who does that down in Texas with our friends from ERCOT, the electric conglomerate down there.
So we're hanging here with Jeff Frame, U of I professor here. He is incredible in his meteorology, his skill, his knowledge, his experience here. And so you've touched on that, great. A lot of people, they see us on TV, but like I said, there's so many other aspects of meteorology, and there still is a lot of things going on and new things and potential and all that, that people can be excited about. I've always loved meteorology too since I was a kid. I just love how weather is the only thing that does impact everyone every single day.
Yeah.
Everyone. No, you can't avoid it.
No, you can't. And I left out a huge component of this right here in our area, of course, the farmers.
Yeah.
Anyone in ag. And I have several friends here in town who work for ag companies. Now, they didn't pay us as a sponsor, so we won't mention who that was.
Call us up if you'd like to sponsor, though.
And or just the farmers themselves. for example, you got to look at not only what's going on here, but what's going on all over the world in terms of affecting prices. And one good example of this is South America, where their harvest, of course, is in March, in April, because it's the southern hemisphere, which is when we're planting things. And then trying to look at the long-range forecast for the summer. Will it be wet or dry or hot or cold, or hot or cool, I guess I should say. And trying to figure out what those prices might be. Because if you remember 2012, that was a really bad drought year. And there are even issues of crop failures here in Illinois, where rain is almost always reliable.
Let's talk a little bit about tornadoes and a consensus among some that says Tornado Alley has shifted. It's not in the traditional Kansas, Oklahoma stuff anymore. Have you found that? Do you subscribe to that? I've heard some that are saying it's moved a little east. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I didn't do the research myself. I have read up on it. I'm fairly convinced that there's a bit of an eastward shift with that. If you look at, for example, long-term precipitation patterns, not only current but projected into the future, there is a bit of a drying trend showing up over some of the high plains. By that I mean kind of western Dakotas down to western Texas. And of course, you can't get tornadoes out of clear skies, right? You need thunderstorms in order to do that. And then as you move east, that's when we see a lot more of kind of our off-season type tornadoes. If you've been around central Illinois for even a few years, January 3rd, 2023, we had tornadoes. The morning of February 27th, we had tornadoes. Go back 10 more years, November 17th, 2013, of course, the big outbreak. We've seen tornadoes in December. Now, of course, our peak is April, May, June, but we do kind of get those off-season events farther east, whereas to the west, you get less of that kind of Colorado, western Nebraska, places like that. And so we think that as the climate changes, you see maybe less summer tornadoes, but more winter tornadoes. And now you're always going to get more tornadoes in spring and summer than you will in winter. But that might kind of account for some of that. And I know the authors of the study did account for things like population. Right, if a tornado touches down in the middle, or develops, in the middle of a field and there's no one there to see it and it doesn't hit anything, does it really happen? Well, if radar might be able to detect it, but it won't be rated very high. And you can see this actually a little better if you look at the hail climatology, not so much here in Illinois, but out west like in Kansas. If you look at all the hail reports over years and years, you can actually make out the highway grid out there. Because people get hailed on as they're driving on the highway, so and the middle of the wheat field. Well, no one's out there. The scarecrow's not going to report any hail today, and they did account for that. The population, effect there.
So are we seeing more tornadoes, or are we just reporting and seeing them more because of cameras and people and the everybody out and about?
Oh, that's the overwhelming factor in all of this. If you look at the graph of tornado reports since 1950, there's this huge upswing. And, if you show somebody, that graph, they say, oh my gosh, tornadoes are getting so much more frequent. But if you look at reports of EF2 or greater tornadoes, what we call significant tornadoes, those are ones who have caused significant damage to structures, i.e. hit things. And if a tornado hit something in 1950, we were not going to miss it. But if a tornado didn't hit something, we probably would. The number of those aren't changing all that much. And yeah, it's really the change in reporting. Storm chasing, we touched on this last week, is a much bigger hobby now. For example, on a big high-risk day in Oklahoma in May, especially on a weekend or a Friday, there could be several hundred people all on a storm, and any little swirl of dust or dirt underneath the wall cloud is going to be reported 50 times.
Yeah, correct.
Whereas, even in 1980, right, Farmer Bob out there in his tractor sees a little swirl tornado. He's not going to do anything about that. What, he's going to maybe call the weather service when he gets back to the farmhouse? Probably not. And now everybody, of course, has a camera in their pocket that is connected to the internet, and it's just a couple button clicks away from publishing that on some social media site where anyone can see it. So that's the overwhelming driver behind the increase in tornado reports over the decades in the U.S. And you see the same thing in Illinois. I think 3 of the last 4 years
we've been pretty high.
Have been, almost record-setting years. And a lot of that, too, we have better radar detection. Around the early 2010s, a little over 10 years ago, they improved the radars. They made them what are called dual polarization. So Doppler means you can see things moving toward or away from the radar. Dual polarization, and they've always been like that, dual polarization means you can say things about what the radar is seeing, the shapes of things or the characteristics of things. And so through some of that atmospheric research done by the National Sphere Storms Lab, among others, they found that, and I know you've shown this on TV, you call it, I think, the debris tracker.
Yeah. What do we call that? I don't even know. Debris. I think it is debris tracking.
Yeah. And the technical term for that is correlation coefficient.
Which, if I said it on the air, people are going to go, huh?
Or if you want to sound, or just use the symbol rho HV, the Greek letter rho HV.
Yep.
They found that tornado debris returns very low values of that, down below like 0.8, 0.7, and that scale only goes from 0 to 1. Mm-hmm. Whereas pure rain or pure snow will be, almost 1, 0.98, 0.99. And so now we have these little brief rain-wrapped tornadoes a lot of times within lines of storms that might have gone undetected even 20 years ago. Well, now, hey, we see the Doppler velocity couplet. We see the dual pole radar signature. Okay, there's some damage here, too. It wasn't just straight-line wind. There was a little tornado with this as well. And I think, and you see a lot of those, too, kind of up in the Chicagoland area where there's more people and a lot more things to hit, including trees.
A lot of trees.
Yeah, trees are better damage indicators than corn or beans or any of those things they have around here. So,
pretty wild there. We now also have the every time I say it, I'm like, can I say that? The EFU.
Yes.
The unidentified.
The EFU, yes. EF is Enhanced Fujita. That took over for the Fujita scale, I believe, in 2006.
Yeah.
And then that goes 0 to 5, and then U would be unknown. And I have seen an EFU tornado out in eastern Wyoming. It was actually a rain-wrapped wedge. You actually had the clear air donut hole on reflectivity. That was back on May 27th, 2018, out near Cheyenne, Wyoming.
But it didn't do any damage.
It didn't do any damage. It crossed I-25, but nobody fortunately drove into it.
Yeah.
And it hit grass. And you just can't, grass. You can't EF3 grass, right? It's grass. It's not even corn, right?
Sure.
I mean, what can happen to that?
Jeff Frame is here with us, meteorologist, storm chaser, professor. We've only got about a minute or so left here. Believe it or not, Jeff, we've touched on a lot, but I'd love to, favorite storm you've ever been on, or have you had any close calls out in storm chasing? Give me one of those to kind of wrap things up.
All right, most memorable chase.
Sure.
Easy one. June 16th, not of this year that I talked about last week, but June 16th, 2014, also in Nebraska. Looked at things in the morning. It looked like it was going to be potentially a pretty violent, severe weather day. And so we targeted northeast Nebraska on our field course, and we ended up seeing 4 EF4 tornadoes. And there were 3 pairs. So 1 overlapped with 2, 2 overlapped with 3, and 3 overlapped with 4. 2 and 3 are these twin stovepipe EF4 tornadoes that, unfortunately, both of which did cause fatalities near the town of Pilger in northeast Nebraska. One of those dissipated. The other one kept moving. A 4th tornado formed, and then that tornado began to rope out and dissipate, and then rotated around the other one at what was tracked as over 100 miles an hour. That's forward speed. Now, these were only moving about 25 or 30 miles an hour, fortunately, but they were all rated EF4, so upper 100 mile an hour winds based on the damage.
The Pilger tornadoes are, still some of the most photogenic also.
Yes.
And slow moving, which is
Yes.
tough to get.
Right, that's a big thing, slow moving.
Yeah.
For chasing them. And also just for people too, because if a tornado is moving faster, one, you have less time to take action and take cover. And then number two, of course, the tornado, right, if it lasts for half an hour, well, it's going to hit more things if it's moving faster. Just like you hit more bugs at 60 miles an hour than at 30 miles an hour, not including aerodynamics with your car.
So you've seen a lot over your years, and man, the Pilgrim tornado, then even just this year, like you talked about some of those other ones. So
Dodge City 2016, Bennington in 2013, 2016
you've seen
out
all
in
of
Kansas.
those?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Jeff has been out there, man. He has been out putting the miles. How many miles you say you think you've drove over?
Oh, chasing over 200,000.
200,000 miles. Amazing.
No, I didn't drive most of that.
Yeah.
Someone else did.
Well, that's good, right? Ladies and gentlemen, that is Jeff Frame from the U of I. Appreciate him stopping in here with us. But that's going to wrap up the show here, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It's Behind the Forecast, and we hope to see you guys back here next week. Have a good rest of your day and night.